Remember when Thanksgiving dinner meant more than just turkey, stuffing, and green bean casserole?
Thanksgiving tables today are often dominated by roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and the occasional green bean casserole. But decades ago, holiday spreads were far more adventurous and, frankly, stranger. Imagine walking into Grandma's dining room in the 1950s or 60s, shimmering gelatin molds in every color of the rainbow, custardy vegetable casseroles bubbling in ornate ceramic dishes, and sweet and savory concoctions that blended fruits, nuts, and marshmallows. These were the days when creativity, convenience, and a love of spectacle collided in the kitchen, producing a parade of side dishes that were as visually striking as they were unusual to contemporary palates. Today, we'll revisit 25 forgotten Thanksgiving side dishes that our grandmas made. By the end of this video, you'll want them all back. Gelatin and molded sides. At number 1, we have lime jello mold. This retro classic often paired green, lime-flavored gelatin with cottage cheese, fruit, marshmallows, or even crushed pineapple, molded into decorative shapes on the holiday table. Back in the mid-20th century, instant gelatin became widely available, enabling homemakers to create whimsical, chilled dishes. The brand Jell-O, now part of Kraft Heinz, helped popularize gelatin in American kitchens. A humorous commentary on this combination even emerged in 1980 in a novelty cabaret song by Pulitzer winner William Bolcom titled "Lime Jell-O Marshmallow Cottage Cheese Surprise," reflecting how ubiquitous these gelatin cream cheese hybrids had become. Moving on. At number 2, we have cranberry fluff, sometimes called cranberry salad. This is a sweet tart side that typically blends raw or canned cranberries, or cranberry sauce, with mini marshmallows and whipped cream or whipped topping. In vintage recipe collections and home-cooked stories, it often surfaces as a molded or chilled dish, especially during Thanksgiving. The Business Insider coverage of vintage Thanksgiving sides notes that such Jell-O and fluff salads were especially widespread in the 1950s and 60s, often using canned fruit and marshmallow mixes. Next up, at number 3, we have Watergate salad or pistachio fluff. This is arguably the most infamous of the molded salads. It is, or rather was, made by combining instant pistachio pudding mix, crushed canned pineapple, whipped topping, usually Cool Whip, mini marshmallows, and sometimes chopped nuts like walnuts or pecans. The pistachio pudding mix that makes this salad possible was introduced by Kraft in 1975, and by then, these kinds of fluffy salads were already growing in popularity. The name Watergate salad arose from a Chicago food editor in the late 1970s who rebranded the original pistachio pineapple delight recipe, possibly as a tongue-in-cheek reference to the Watergate scandal. Early recipes for the dish appeared in newspapers in 1975. One from the Washington Post gave proportions of pineapple, pudding mix, marshmallows, and whipped topping. By 1993, Kraft had officially adopted the name Watergate salad on its packaging. At number 4, we have ambrosia salad. Ambrosia is a fruit-laden, creamy molded salad whose origins stretch back to the late 19th century in the southern United States. The first documented recipe appeared in Dixie Cookery, written by Maria Massey Barringer of North Carolina, where she layered grated coconut with orange segments. Over time, as transportation networks like the railroad made tropical ingredients more accessible, the dish evolved. By the early 20th century, cooks added pineapple, and by the 1920s and 30s, marshmallows had crept in as they grew commercially popular. In the decades after World War II, canned fruit, like mandarin oranges and pineapple, non-dairy whipped toppings, like Cool Whip, and sometimes even cottage cheese or pudding, became common in ambrosia. The name ambrosia comes from the Greek word for the food of the gods. In its heyday, it was a symbol of festive indulgence. But wait, there's more to it than just gelatin-based dishes. Creamed or custardy vegetables. At number 5, we have creamed spinach. This is a timeless side dish in which tender spinach leaves are enveloped by a rich, creamy sauce, often made using a bechamel base, seasoned lightly with nutmeg. The technique has European roots. Spinach was eaten in Persia over 2,000 years ago. But by the Renaissance, it had become widely used in Europe, where cooks began combining it with butter, flour, and cream. In the United States, its popularity surged in the early 20th century, especially within the steakhouse tradition. High-end restaurants such as Old Homestead Steakhouse in New York or the Berghoff in Chicago often serve their own signature versions. A classic home-cooked recipe involves cooking fresh or frozen spinach until wilted, then draining it thoroughly before folding it into a sauce made of butter, flour, and cream, or milk, enriched with a pinch of ground nutmeg. While creamed spinach remains well known in restaurants today, it was also a staple on home dining tables in mid-20th century America, when convenience and richness defined many celebratory meals. Next up, at number 6, we have creamed peas. This dish emerged as a comforting and economical side dish, gaining widespread popularity in America by the 1940s and 50s, when canned and frozen peas became commonplace. The technique involves simmering green peas in a butter and flour-thickened milk sauce, essentially a simple bechamel enriched with peas. Vintage cookbooks and nostalgic recipe collections note that this dish was prized for giving a humble vegetable a more luxurious, smooth texture. Sometimes versions include a topping of breadcrumbs and a brief bake, lending a golden crust that balances the creaminess beneath. While creamed peas have declined among modern Thanksgiving sides, in mid-century meals, they represented both frugality and an effort to elevate basic vegetables into something worthy of a holiday table. At number 7, we have creamed pearl onions. Sometimes simply referred to as creamed onions, this dish features tiny alliums, simmered first in water, then finished in a custardy sauce of butter, flour and cream, or half and half, often seasoned with nutmeg, bay leaf, or herbs like thyme. The pearl onion itself is distinct for its small size and milder, sweeter flavor than common onions. According to food historians and vintage recipe sleuths, creamed onions trace back to early 20th century American holiday tables, with roots in English cuisine and classic French bechamel sauce traditions. A common technique is to blanch the pearl onions to loosen their skins, peel them, and then simmer them gently in cream. Some retro recipes even call for finishing the dish in an oven gratin style, topped with a thyme breadcrumb crust. At number 8, we have corn pudding. This is a custard-like southern side dish, sometimes called pudding corn, hoppy glob, or spoon bread, with deep roots in the rural South and Appalachian cuisine. The dish typically combines whole kernel corn and creamed corn with eggs, milk, sugar, butter, and often a dash of nutmeg. In one mid-century newspaper-clipped recipe, 6 ears of white corn, 4 beaten eggs, flour, a stick of butter, milk, salt, and pimientos, or bell pepper were folded together, baked in a buttered casserole dish in a water bath at 325 degrees Fahrenheit until set. A particularly iconic version is T's corn pudding, which has been a Louisville, Kentucky tradition since the 1950s. It was created in the kitchen of Ida T. Webb Thompson and later popularized through Southern Living in 1995, thanks to her granddaughter, Kathy Carey, a James Beard Award-nominated chef. Kathy Carey's variation even involves pureeing part of the corn with cream to achieve a silkier texture. Moving on, vegetable-based sides. Next, at number 9, we have succotash. This is a storied dish of corn and lima beans that dates back centuries. The name comes from the Narragansett word msikwatash or sokutahash, meaning broken corn kernels. Native American peoples of New England taught early European settlers how to cook this mixture in the 1600s. By the time of the Pilgrims' 1621 harvest celebration at Plymouth, succotash was likely already part of the seasonal fare. The classic version includes sweet corn, lima beans, and sometimes bell peppers or tomatoes. Later adaptations, especially in the American South, added ingredients like okra, salt pork, and butter. The dish's appeal lies in its nutritional balance. Combining corn with legumes supplies a complementary set of amino acids, making it a resourceful, sustaining side. Sava describes it as a uniquely American offering rooted in indigenous agricultural practice, specifically the Three Sisters method, where corn, beans, and squash grew together. At number 10, we have mashed pumpkin. Pumpkins are native to North America, cultivated by Native American tribes long before European arrival. Many historians believe that mashed pumpkin, made by cooking and pureeing the flesh of pumpkins, was likely present at early colonial harvest meals, possibly even during the 1621 Thanksgiving in Plymouth. Unlike pie, mashed pumpkin was often served savory, lightly seasoned with butter and salt, which emphasized its earthy, natural flavor rather than sugar. Nutritionally, a single cup of plain mashed pumpkin is remarkably rich in beta-carotene, dietary fiber, and potassium, while being quite low in calories. Over time, pumpkin puree found more fame in desserts. Next up, at number 11, we have glazed carrots. This dish offers a sweet, buttery contrast to heartier sides. In the United States and Europe, this vegetable side has long been made by simmering carrots in a thin syrup of butter and brown sugar, sometimes with acidic touches like orange juice. The dish aligns with mid-century American holiday tables. Cooked carrots glazed in this way became especially common during celebratory meals, such as Thanksgiving, when sweet, glossy vegetables complemented roasted meats. As carrots are gently cooked by steaming or simmering, their natural sugars caramelize, deepening their flavor and producing a syrupy glaze that is both nostalgic and deeply comforting. Although glazed carrots are not as ubiquitous now, food historians note their distinctly retro, mid-20th century vibe. At number 12, we have stewed tomatoes. This dish brings a warmly seasoned, rustic depth to the vegetable side roster. According to culinary historians, stewed tomatoes became popular in the United States in the early 19th century. A recipe appears in Lydia Maria Child's The Frugal Housewife from 1829. By the 1840s, they were appearing on restaurant menus, and in the 1940s, canned stewed tomatoes became widely available. The base preparation typically involves simmering tomatoes with garlic, herbs like basil or thyme, salt, and sometimes a little sugar or butter, creating a versatile side that pairs well with bread, meats, or other vegetables. Food historian Betty Fussell has reflected that for her grandfather's generation, stewed tomatoes were a beloved everyday comfort food. Next, at number 13, we have candied yams. Technically, what most Americans call yams are actually sweet potatoes. The association of sweet potatoes with Thanksgiving goes back through the 19th century. Cookbooks from that era, such as the Boston Cooking School cookbook, included glazed sweet potato recipes. But the iconic marshmallow-topped version we often see today began in the early 20th century. In 1917, Angelus Marshmallow Company published a pamphlet instructing home cooks to bake sweet potatoes with marshmallows, popularizing the combo. Sweet potatoes are typically slow-cooked in a rich, buttery glaze with brown sugar, warm spices like cinnamon and nutmeg, and often a splash of orange juice or zest. In Black and soul food Southern traditions, candied yams are deeply rooted in cultural history, prepared with generations of care, often without marshmallows, but always with a glossy, caramelized finish that celebrates the humble sweet potato's natural sweetness. Over time, the dish became a Thanksgiving cornerstone, not just for its flavor, but also as a symbol of heritage, comfort, and holiday excess. But wait, there's a lot more from where that came: classic casseroles. At number 14, we have green bean casserole. This is the quintessential mid-century American casserole. Green bean casserole was invented in 1955 by Dorcas Riley, then a home economics supervisor at Campbell's Test Kitchen in Camden, New Jersey. Faced with a challenge to come up with a simple, convenient recipe that used everyday pantry items, she combined canned green beans, Campbell's condensed cream of mushroom soup, milk, soy sauce, black pepper, and topped it with French fried onions. The recipe was originally called green bean bake and appeared on Campbell's soup cans, but by the 1960s, it had evolved into the name we know today. Green bean casserole has since become a Thanksgiving staple. As of 2020, Campbell's estimates it is served in roughly 20 million US Thanksgiving dinners each year. And astonishingly, 40% of their cream of mushroom soup sales go into this single dish. Dorcas Riley's original recipe card was later donated to the National Inventors Hall of Fame in Akron, Ohio, preserving its legacy. Next up, at number 15, we have corn casserole, sometimes called spoon bread, corn bowl, or hoppy glop. This dish has deep roots in Southern and Appalachian cuisine. Its ancestor is corn pudding, a creamy custardy dish made from maize, water, and thickening agents, which has been a staple in rural southern US cooking for generations. Over time, modern versions evolved. In the mid-20th century, Jiffy, the brand famous for its corn muffin mix, introduced a corn bowl recipe, which appeared in grocery store tear-off sheets in the 1960s. By 1976, this had become spoon bread in Jiffy's first cookbook, and it remains a comforting Thanksgiving side. According to food historian Charles Reagan Wilson, spoon bread is perhaps the highest culinary attainment of cornbread, and the civil rights activist John Egerton described it as a steaming hot, feather-like dish. At number 16, we have chestnut stuffing. This is a bread-based side that was once far more common on Thanksgiving than it is today. The dish draws on the once widespread American chestnut tree, which dominated eastern US forests until the chestnut blight decimated its population in the early 20th century. Chestnut stuffing has appeared in American cookbooks since at least the 19th century. A boiled chestnut recipe was published in Mrs. Lincoln's Boston Cookbook in 1884. Even earlier, a version appeared in The Frugal Housewife in 1772, indicating its English origins. Traditional chestnut stuffing combines diced or boiled chestnuts with bread cubes, sautéed onions, herbs like sage or parsley, butter, and stock. It is often baked in a shallow casserole, so the top crisps, while the interior remains moist. Up next, we have oyster dressing at number 17. This is a side deeply rooted in colonial and coastal American tradition. The practice of using oysters in stuffing or dressing goes back more than 300 years, introduced by British colonists. One of the earliest documented recipes is in The Accomplished Cook, which describes cooking oysters with bacon and bread to stuff poultry. These oyster dressings became part of American holiday tables, particularly along the East Coast and in the South. By the 1700s, American cookbooks printed oyster stuffing recipes, and by the mid-1800s, railroad dining cars, such as those of the Pennsylvania Railroad and Union Pacific, were serving oyster stuffing during Thanksgiving or aboard holiday trains. Traditionally, oyster dressing is made by sautéing onions and celery in butter, adding shucked oysters with their liquor or brine, combining with cubed, stale bread, herbs, and sometimes spices like mace, then baking until the bread absorbs the oyster-infused liquid. Over time, variations emerged, including cornbread-based oyster dressing in Southern cuisine. Moving on, we have some wonderful fruity dishes too. Fruit-based salads and sides. At number 18, we have Waldorf salad. It was first created around 1896 at New York City's Waldorf Hotel, later named the Waldorf Astoria, by maître d'hôtel Oscar Tchirky, who popularized numerous signature dishes. The original recipe, published in the cookbook by Oscar of the Waldorf, included crisp apples, celery, and mayonnaise. By 1928, chopped walnuts were added, and grapes followed, creating the fruit-nut contrast that defines the classic Waldorf today. Over time, modern variations have used yogurt instead of mayonnaise, included chicken or turkey, or incorporated dried fruit. The salad is traditionally served chilled on a bed of lettuce, and even after the Waldorf Astoria's nearly $2 billion renovation, it continues to appear in a refreshed version on the menu. Next up, at number 19, we have fruit cocktail salad. This salad rose to prominence with the mid-20th century boom in canned fruit. Commercial fruit cocktail was first sold in 1930 by Herbert Gray of Baron Gray Packing Company in San Jose, California, and by 1938, Del Monte marketed its own version. The mix typically includes diced peaches, pears, pineapple, and grapes, sometimes with cherry halves packed in syrup. Canned fruit was economical, allowing cosmetically damaged or bruised fruit to be repurposed. During the 1950s and 1960s, fruit cocktail became a key ingredient in ambrosia salad, jello salads, and other molded desserts because of its convenience, sweetness, and long shelf life. At number 20, we have pineapple salad. A common mid-century version, the pineapple cheese salad, appeared in 1952 in the Courier Times Book of Famous Recipes. It combined lime-flavored gelatin, cream cheese, crushed canned pineapple, and mini marshmallows, blending sweet and tangy flavors in a chilled gel mold. These salads reflected post-war fascination with convenience. Gelatin required no cooking, canned pineapple was shelf-stable, and cream cheese added richness. Variations sometimes added nuts or different gelatin flavors, but the basic structure remained emblematic of the frozen salad craze. Moving on, at number 21, we have the sweet potato soufflé. Light, airy, and often topped with marshmallows, it became popular in mid-20th century Southern and soul food traditions. While its exact published origins are unclear, companies like the Angelus Marshmallow Company promoted marshmallow-topped sweet potatoes as early as 1917, encouraging home cooks to bake them as a holiday side. Its sweetness and presentation made it a natural companion to molded fruit dishes on festive tables. At number 22, we have jellied vegetable terrine. These terrines combined flavored gelatin with vegetables such as peas, carrots, or green beans, set in decorative molds. Though rooted in French culinary tradition, their popularity in American homes surged in the 1940s to 1960s, paralleling the rise of dessert jello salads. The accessibility of powdered gelatin made such creations widespread. By the 1950s, nearly 1/3 of salad recipes in home cookbooks included gelatin. These molds were prized for visual presentation as much as flavor, often gracing holiday tables or luncheon spreads. Next up, we have molded cheese loaf at number 23. This is a cold gelatin salad made from cheese, gelatin, and sometimes milk, mayonnaise, or sour cream, set in a loaf pan and sliced for serving with crackers. Popular in the mid-20th century at cocktail parties, holiday buffets, and church suppers, these loaves could include cream cheese, maraschino cherries, walnuts, and green pepper. Back in the 1950s and 1960s, salads were not just leafy greens, but could be decorative, chilled, and molded, forming solid, sliceable dishes. At number 24, we have pickled beets. Although not a gelatin dish, pickled beets were a cold side salad rooted in European food culture. Pickling with sugar, vinegar, and spices has Eastern European and Scandinavian origins, and canned or jarred beets became common in the US in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Chilled after pickling, sweet sour beets appeared on mid-century American holiday tables, offering a bright, tangy contrast to creamy or gelatin sides. Lastly, at number 25, we have broccoli cauliflower salad. This is a potluck and holiday staple popularized in mid-century America. Raw or lightly blanched florets were tossed with bacon, raisins, or nuts in a sweet and tangy mayonnaise-based dressing. One common recipe mixed mayonnaise, sugar, and vinegar poured over broccoli, crisp bacon bits, raisins, and sometimes sunflower seeds. This salad became a favorite at department store cafeterias and church potlucks in the 1950s and 60s, with its crunchy texture and creamy sweet dressing, exemplifying the era's fondness for make-ahead cold mixed sides. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.